Right, I'm doing a test on this 80mm fan I fitted to the PSU to cut down the noise levels, and I've got this thermostat, thermocouple, whatever it is, from this VC99 linked up right to one of the hot parts on the outside of the PSU. I know it gets hot because there's a screw to the case, and that the case acts as a heat sink. And you can see it's 49. I've got max min on, so I'll show you the min. The min temperature is like the ambient temperature. I can press it. 27. So it's about 27 degrees, and it's pushing 49. 49 is about the limit I would want. So I'm going to wait until this print gets near the end and see if there's any problems. But in this, at the moment, I haven't any like holes drilled or cut in the bottom of this case, which I plan to do. And that, this is a bit warm, that will aid airflow, because there's about 5mm gap between the fan, 80mm by 10mm, and the way is on the bottom, near the bottom of this sort of control box now, and that's blowing air into the PSU, and it comes out, well, where the old fan was, probably, mainly. But it seems to be alright. Now, to be honest with you, this did cut out, because if the temperature gets too high on the PSU, it'll just cut out to save it from burning out, so to speak. And now I wait a bit. The reason it cut out is actually because I had a cable going across, which now I've sort of tacked up with some blue tack, and that cable was actually touching the fan blades and stopping it turning. But that proves that the PSU is protecting itself by cutting out. That would stop the print, so to speak. So as you see, it's on 49. This is centigrade. Sorry if you're on Fahrenheit, and we're about 36%. I'll probably show you about 50% as well. Well, anyway, this will do the maximum, or should do the maximum. Show me the maximum sort of temperature that's got to. But it seems to stabilise about 48, 49. That's, I think it's 48 that the two thermocouples inside, I don't know the thermostats, thermocouples, whatever they are, inside the PSU triggered the fan to come on. So it certainly seems to be working well. Well, I think I would still like a bit more airflow, so I intend to cut a hole in the bottom panel and then put a like finger guard on the bottom, because there is a gap. There's about maybe 15mm under here. Sorry if you can't see this. So I can easily get my fingertip under there. So it's about 10-15mm gap under there. And that would aid airflow to that fan. As I say, the way it is at the moment, there are some like vents in the bottom of the case, but they're not directly in line with the 80mm fan that I've fitted. So that's sort of some thinking on the lines of doing, just to make sure that the airflow is not restricted. Because as I said, there's about 7mm gap, 5, 6, 7mm gap between the bottom of the fan and the bottom of the case, so to speak. So that probably is restricting airflow a bit. But you can hear the noise levels. This is with the silent, Creality silent board in, TMC 22808, I think. And yes, it is printing. A lot of the noise is actually coming from the part fan, which is a blower, and the hot end fan. These are two 40mm fans, 10mm sort of thing. So I might be looking at doing a replacement for these. I know this is making a noise, like a whistling noise, well, a bit of a whistling noise. Let me move back about a metre away. A metre is a good measurement for doing noise levels. So put some details here about doing the case. And here's some details about the Creality silent board that I'm using. This is another iteration I'm doing of like a tripod mount. It's for this. To fit this too. This is like a ring light. Quite bright, 12 volts, all worked off 12 volts. So that's to go on the front of the camera. Hang on, can I hold it on there? And as I move about, give some light, so to speak. So that's pretty bright. Two 12 volt car sort of lights and a ring light. This ring light does have a, I think it's a boost converter that comes with it, so you only put in 12 volts and then it goes through this boost converter there. I think it's a boost to boost the voltage up for the ring light LEDs, but you only put 12 volts, and these two big LEDs are just 12 volts. Yep, so that's something I'm working on. So I'm just pinning this out at 30% and 0.3 layer height just for quick prints, because it's just an iteration to test out how well it fits to the tripod and such like. So this is a tripod. Well, in a way it's a head that I want to fit to. Supposed to be a fluid head, but I think these work by more friction, but they do like make it smoother to move about. I've had this quite a bit and it's been knocked about and banged about a bit and been hacked into and such like. So that's the fit in there, it's quick release. Right. So still on 49, but as I say, this should show the maximum temperature, well, and the minimum if you ask for it. Right, it's just over halfway through, 58% there. Oh, by the way, the bed's on 200, the heat bed, sorry, the nozzle's on 200, the heat bed's on 60, as you can see. Just over 1 hour. It doesn't show the zeros on here, so I'm assuming that's 1 hour 20 minutes. And we're still at 49, so it's holding the temperature at 49 using this 80mm fan, and that's probably within the range of the chips. I mean, the PSU hasn't cut out here. It's been going over an hour, well, slightly over an hour up to now. I have done other tests on this, and yeah, it seems to stabilise at 48, 49 degrees. That will depend on ambient temperature. Actually, what was the starting temperature again? 27, I think. Yeah, 27, so that was sort of the ambient temperature. Got some LEDs on this printer. Turn one or off. So get the noise levels here. And sometimes, I mean, usually in the same room, but I'm having to turn around and look to make sure that it's turned on. But it's still printing, that it's not sort of turned off. That's the noise of the filament there clicking, I think. This part here, I fitted this part here because this conduit tubing was rubbing against this carriage sometimes, and see how it's ridged like corrugated and making a noise. So this lifts it off. I'm going to print out another one that's just a little bit higher actually, because it still just catches in one certain position still, just about 15 millimeters higher. That works fine, very lightweight. It straddles the, sorry about the lighting here, it straddles the sort of printer carriage plate here, the hot end carriage. You can see down there, it's probably, oops, a bit dark. 4 bolts in, those just tighten up against the plate, just to make sure it's not going to move, tie up in there, and that pulls this tube away from this carriage as it's moving backwards and forward. So just to say that the carriage moves really, the heat bed moves down and that's it. Well, it will move up and down a little bit because it's on auto level, BL touch auto level, but mainly it moves down the heat bed there. Don't know if I can show you auto level working, can I? Might be hard to see because it doesn't move that much. Might just see turn a bit sometimes. I think it's turning very slowly. So you might notice if you look at that sort of joint that it is turning. Yep. So try and catch this when it's almost finishing off to get the well, anyway, as I say, it will hold the max, should hold the maximum temperature on this Vichy VC99 to 49. That's probably within the range of the integrated circuits quite well. Anything over 55 I would not like. It's warmish on the top here. But as I say, I intend to cut a hole, round hole where the fan is, to let more air in with a finger guard on. I've got a nibbler, what is known as a nibbler, on order. For the PSU I just use the drill and sort of some types of tin snips I have to cut an 80mm, well, a hole for an 80mm fan on. And I did, if you look at this video, that talks about fitting the 80mm fan. And that works very well. Because one of the things that makes a lot of the noise is the fan on the PSU. This is a Meanwell power supply. Right, I'll try and catch this when it's, well, near the end. Well, 49 degrees seems to be holding at that temperature. 1 hour, we'll call it 20 minutes. And definitely stabilised at that temperature. Showing you the min again, but that's the starting temperature. So it's adding about 20 degrees there. Right, I think it's going to hold at that. I don't think it's going to get any warmer. That seems to be working fine. Just make sure, like I made a mistake by having a loose cable in here. That was for my LEDs, I think. And going from a buck converter, 24 to 12 volt converter in there. Going to my LEDs, it goes to this filter fan, which has a HEPA filter and carbon filters in. There's 2 fans, there's one inside there as well. Try and restrict any problems with particles. Can I get one problem with this printer? see this bar here, it's right in the way of, if you want this video, or especially when you're doing auto leveling by eyesight. I think that's pulling focus on the bar actually. So sometimes I can get, see some of the struggle, I think, because of lights. Yep, that's printing okay for, you can see the infill there, 30%. Oops, pulling focus on my hand, I think. 49. As I say, that's without any holes in the bottom to aid airflow going to the fan itself. So there's only about a 5mm gap between the bottom of the fan and the case. The case does has vent holes in anyway. But when I get my nibbler, as it's known as, I wouldn't want to try cutting this casing with tin snips. It's about 1mm, 1.5mm thick, quite sturdy, sort of almost like locker metal, what I call locker metal, folded section. Wouldn't want to try and cut that with tin snips. I was thinking of drilling quite a number of small holes in, but I think this nibbler will be able to cut a hole for an 80mm fan, and then I'll put a finger guard on. I have some finger guards on the bottom, and there's, as I say, there's enough gap. There's more gap under there, about 10mm. Yeah. So as I say, it seems to be stabilising at 49, so that seems to be working on okay, that fan as it is, without any like hole in the bottom of the case. But I would say you might have to watch the ambient temperature. So let me have a look at this other temperature gauge thing I have. I'd rather trust the Vichy VC99 than this, so that's saying about 25. It's a relative, and it is relative humidity. So look, I'm finishing off soon. 1 hour 23 minutes. You're limited to how many characters you can have on this display. If you have a file name too long, it just won't show. I think it's about 15, 16 characters. I think at 16 it starts putting one of those like tiled marks, is it, in, or anything much over that, say 17, 18, then it won't show that file name at all. So you've got to chop this like file name down. This does have supports on this part. Come off reasonably easily, no major problems there. If you've been hearing any sort of clicking noise, it has been the filament. It was like slightly twisted in on this spool. Notice how I've got the spool mounted, so that I can, I can stand here and say, right, there's halfway, 50% of that spool used up, or there's 50% left, depending whether you're optimistic or pessimistic. So you have a video about mounting a spool like that. You need it at least 100mm behind the printer. Remember, and this printer's pretty big to do this idea. And I have another video about this extruder mounted up here, a feeding mechanism, and it's a lot easier to thread like the filament in here than being under here where you normally is, where you're having to fiddle underneath the heat bed, so to speak. So there's a video about that. Let's get rid of shadows. A video about the strain gauge. It's for the, that's finished now. Let's have a look at the temperature. 49 degrees. Expect it to slowly possibly start lowering down because it's not doing any more work, and the PSU is not doing any major work like moving the carriages about, and the temperatures will switch off on the thermos, when they have switched off to a certain extent. You have it set to go to 32 and play a tune, but the tunes don't work on here in G code. Don't think this even has a beeper on this display, not like the LCD 12864 which has a beeper and you can play a tune. I use that to save. I go to 32, which is dodgy on Marlin. I've told Marlin on GitHub about this. It doesn't work properly. You should go to 32 and play a tune to tell me, right, I can release the part from the bed, and then it should go to 0. Well, near enough 0. Right, enough of that. 49 degrees. So that seems to be the temperature it's going to. As I say, that will depend on ambient temperature, so that's a thing you might have to watch out for. The ambient temperature here is about 25. This is approximate ambient temperature. Actually, I do have a thermostat up here, if you can see it. I'd rather rely on this, but that's saying 25. Just got some marks on here to mark out whether it's too hot or too cold. Yep, so that's about the ambient temperature in this case. That's centigrade.